Joining us today on the Beyond Scaling podcast is Matthew Waxman. Matthew is the Director of Program Distribution at Alchemy Insurance Solutions, which is an MBA based out of Pennsylvania. With more than a decade experience in sales growth and program development, Matthew is now helping shape how Alchemy expands into fast-moving areas such as builders risk and beyond. So in this episode, The Quiet Shift in Insurance, we're going to dig into what clients truly want from agencies today and where traditional models fall short, and how forward-thinking leaders like Matthew are navigating the change. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. I see Pennsylvania is the home base for Alchemy. Where are you calling from today? Where are you based?
Sure. So, Pennsylvania is the home base for Alchemy. I'm actually based out of Tampa, Florida. Within the organization, we wind up referring to ourselves as a lean organization, but most individuals inside of the organization work to some degree remote. We have a small handful that operate outside of, the Pennsylvania office itself and inside of the Pennsylvania office, but most of us are scattered throughout the country, which helps provide additional servicing. Obviously, here in the States, we're multiple time zones. So having the ability to provide our clients, our agents, our access points, full service throughout the course of their day becomes a valuable item. So we embrace that like remote culture essentially.
Yeah. I suppose it makes sense as well, considering the vast number of states that you're supporting. Is that something that's always been there since Alchemy was around, or is that something that's kind of shifted since COVID?
I would think that there's been a good shift since COVID. With us being, I'm going to call us a slightly newer company, but with us being a newer growth company is probably the better way to explain it. We have learned that attracting the kind of talent that we need involves a greater reach than just sticking inside of the Lancaster type area. So it opens us up to a better quality of candidate and obviously a much larger candidate pool. So like now, as I am progressing in my own role and I'm moving actually into a new space since the last time that you and I talked, I actually secured a promotion yesterday that is not fully out there to the world, but I am moving into the AVP of Sales and Marketing role. So jumping up, overarching into all of sales and marketing for the company, which I'm pretty proud to put out there.
Absolutely.
But with doing that, like a lot of it is, now growth and development internally. So we do a fair amount of looking outside of for talent. And I'm interviewing people all across the country, whether it be like New York or Fargo, North Dakota, or, Salt Lake City, Utah. Like there's having the ability to be fully remote allows you to find the kind of talent that you want in the place that you want it. And that's valid. There are obviously some roles, like internalized roles, that we want in Pennsylvania. There's also at the same time, for me, right, in servicing our distribution, it is important to have individuals who are what I would call boots on the ground. So within a specific region, having someone, at least one person within the sales and marketing scope that knows the market in their region, that knows the sales strategies and distribution in their region, that knows the nuances of how to speak to clients in that area. Because quite frankly, the way you would, and we kind of talked about this a little before we started into the podcast, the way that you talk to people in a region varies, right? The way I would talk to somebody in New York is going to be very different from the way that I would talk to somebody in Florida or in North or South Carolina or in California, because there are these slight cultural differences, because there are ways in which we associate that are different. And that connection is something that I think is becoming more and more important in the insurance space as well. A situation where someone wants to know the story behind the individual they're interacting with. They want to know that there's a face, that there's a person. They want to know about the company that their, insurance policy is going to be with, whether it's just on the financials or if they want to know an entire built out story. And so for us, we actually started as Cornerstone insurance producers about 13 years ago. And when I came on about a year ago, one of my initiatives was to rebrand the company to a name that made us more distinct in the marketplace, but that also spoke to our culture and what we were looking to accomplish. And that's where the Alchemy name was kind of born.
I really like it. By the way, congratulations on your promotion. You kept that quiet. We had a good chat before
Thank you.
before the
Thank
recording.
you.
You kept that under your hat, so we got an exclusive. Congratulations, Matt. Really well done.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much. I
you.
appreciate it. I'm excited to look at the future and what it entails. So
Yeah, you're gonna be a busy man. Even busier,
I'm
man.
always a busy man.
Hey, Matt, you just mentioned the shift from Cornerstone to Alchemy. It's quite a distinction in that, and I really like Alchemy. I really like the brand you've created. You know, the website. It's got that modern feel to it, and Cornerstone has that traditional, foundational kind of insurance space feel to it from way back, right? What was the kind of thinking behind that shift? What was the message you're trying to send with that?
Sure. So to me, like growing up and being in this kind of sales and marketing role and being able to put things out in a physical presence, you know, insurance is a tough one. You're in a field where there's no tangible item. You're not selling a tangible product. So it's an intangible item. What you're doing is you're selling the brand, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's where these big companies really excel because they've got these long established brands and that brand identity. And, you know, we talked about names and we went over things and we looked at, you know, the standard insurance conversation of like insurance is known for, you know, stability and support and all these. And so you throw all those figures out there. And I said, you know, what are we doing that's different? What makes us different? What makes us unique? And that's where the Alchemy name kind of came from. And I joke around and I tell people all the time, like, no one wakes up super excited to talk about insurance and super amped about, you know, this is what it is. Insurance to most people is sort of mundane. And this gives us the opportunity to kind of transform that mundane item to something of value, which is exactly what the alchemy pseudoscience is, right? It's the medieval science of taking base materials and turning them into gold. And so
Yeah.
I usually tell people, you know, there's two things that we do. Like as an organization, as a culture, we try to transform relationships in the insurance space. I tell people I will talk to everyone. You know, realistically, like anything that we can do to help transform the way the relationships exist in the insurance space, I want to do. So we want to go ahead and we want to provide the greatest ease of use to individuals who are shopping, whether it's, you know, at the individual level or at the agency level or the wholesaler level or the aggregator level. I want them to be like thinking, if I go to Alchemy, I will get what I need and I will get it fast. So if we can leverage technology and we can leverage our relationships to change that game a little bit, it increases that brand recognition. So that's one of the angles that I play up quite a bit with Alchemy. The other one I play up with Alchemy is that I often tell people that we are solving for what I call the difficult X. You know, we started out playing in a field which was self-storage tenant insurance, basically, you know, physical coverage for items kept in storage facilities. It is not an agent forward play and it was not a direct consumer play necessarily, but it was a need market that tied into a relationship that we had external to our own organization. And so we were able to provide that and get it rolled out across all 50 states. It is now like a fully embedded platform program that is used by self-storage facilities all across the country, and it continues to grow and drive revenues on a fairly simple basis, right? There's very little work that we need to do for that. Moving into things, you know, we are closely tied with Florida. Florida is a very difficult property state with hurricanes and storms and rains and winds. It Most carriers basically pull their pants up and run when something comes. We have the
Yeah.
ability and the flexibility and the carrier relationships to be able to play in that space. And that's where our builder's risk program was born, in the notion that everyone else was running away from property in the state. And we could provide property and we could provide coverage for that property all the way up to the water and provide wind coverage for it. And it makes
Wow.
us unique in the space. And as we continue to expand that program, which we now have like coastal Texas as part of it, we will look to continue that throughout all of the hurricane affected regions, which is a huge growth opportunity, a huge growth model. And so that's where I say we're solving for difficult X. So we always want to hear from the market. We want to hear from the distribution, like, what is it that you're having trouble placing? What is it that other carriers are running from? And then we sit there and look and say, can we develop a program that we can get a carrier partner on board for that will solve for this? And we're not going to be able to solve for everything. You know, we don't want to be this big generalist GA. We want to find the verticals that work for us, and we want to excel in those verticals. And then, of course, at the same time, leveraging technology to increase their ease of use to where they can be like, this is the easiest thing I've done all day. Boom.
Yeah.
I'm going to use you guys again. That's great. And then we've got other plays out there. I mean, we are, truth be told, fairly growth aggressive, which I enjoy. It is an ever-changing environment. Insurance is an ever-changing environment, and niche insurance is an ever-changing environment. So it keeps me on my toes. And you know, when we talked about earlier, like loving what you do, it's oddly enough like something that I'm
Yeah.
fairly like in love with, though it's sort of like a masochistic role.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. The rebrand, it clearly wasn't a rebrand for the sake of rebranding, and I think you've done a great job. I think your website and really and how you've explained it there so eloquently really captures the essence of where you're going moving forward with technology and really staying ahead of the curve and tackling these areas where the traditional Cornerstone type organizations are shying away from. I think a rebranding makes a lot of sense, and again, I think you've done a great job in it.
Thanks,
When
Lloyd.
it
I was
comes,
like, we're really passionate about the rebrand too, and I think, I mean, I hope that passion carries across. But I have been
no,
very
in
passionate
abundance,
about the
yeah,
rebrand. So
it's clear, yeah, no, and again, you've done a great job with it, and yeah, I'm really impressed. Website especially, it hasn't, it's a big shift. That's why I wanted to bring it up actually. So I'm glad you brought it up. In Matt, in a role where you're managing relationships, right, you're rolling out all of these challenging new products, you know, cannabis being one of them, and I'd love to touch on that a little bit later. You know,
sure.
you're solving bottlenecks. You know, where does the lion's share of your time actually get consumed? I suppose, and looking forward into the new role, where is it likely to get absorbed the most?
Oh, I mean, that is a tough one, and I usually talk about, you know, wearing multiple hats, and we're an organization where individuals inside of the organization wear multiple hats, but I also have for a long time referred to business in general, and then more so even in insurance on the company side of things, being this like spoke and wheel kind of situation, where you have a situation where each department is a spoke in a wheel, and the wheel has to constantly be moving forward. And so every spoke needs to provide the same support level to keep that wheel moving. And when a spoke does not, other spokes have to contribute to the load bear to be able to keep the wheel moving forward. And that's usually how I explain any kind of role within the insurance space. And for me, there's a lot of cross involvement, especially with us playing the technology game, right? For us, when we're looking at growth and development, and we're looking at platforms, or we're looking at compliance, or we're looking at, you know, hosting sites, or customer service, or CRM or AMS materials, like, there's a group of us that have to be involved in that. It's not a unilateral decision. Thankfully, it's not a unilateral decision. Like, I
Yeah,
worked for companies before where someone up top makes a unilateral decision and changes the focus of the entire company. We are amazingly collaborative. So a good deal of my time is spent in collaboration with, you know, the C-suite and with the department leads in the other departments to make sure that what we're developing, what we're growing, fits our model, fits our brand, and carries, you know, for need. Because I don't want to just put things out there that have no value, that won't add something to the relationships that we have in place. And if it doesn't solve something, is it worth the time investment? So there's a good amount of that that goes on. And then, you know, to what you said, the other big portion of things is relationship. We are pretty lean. And with that being said, we manage a ton of relationships, both inside, like internal customer, and external customer. Um, and as we continue to grow, and I am thankful that we are able to grow aggressively, I'm thankful that we have attractive programs and attractive brands. it brings more people in, and more people coming in means more relationships to manage, which means more phone calls, more emails, more text messages. So time has to be managed appropriately. And I love the fact that I'm forced into that now, because if you were to ask me 3 or 4 years ago, like, what is it that you struggle with the most professionally? I would have said time management.
Yeah,
And now I'm forced to find balance, which I think is probably the greatest lesson that I have had in my entire career.
time management is key. It is key, especially in a position like yours, like yourself, and with all of the different areas and the focus areas that Alchemy has. And it's a diverse portfolio, but it doesn't feel diluted, Matt. It still feels focused somehow. They feel quite different, but it's not this. It's not just a raft of we growth for growth's sake. Then it still feels relatable and kind of it's niche, if you like. Is that
Yeah,
fair to
and
say?
that's, I mean, that's what we were born out of, and that's where we will probably stay. Like, we don't want to necessarily be generalist. We want to be niche, and we want to be experts in what we're offering. But I think with us being niche and allowing us, ourselves to be niche, we're allowed to be experts in our domain. And I think that separates us from a lot of the other, MGA,
Absolutely.
MGUs in there, that they will just kind of grab at everything. We have an expert behind every single program. We have an expert that develops and maintains every single program. And then we have expert underwriters within those programs to make sure that we provide the maximum flexibility within our programs to be able to place risk. Like, I think we, like, underwriters will use the term hairy, right? And I think that's more like an American thing maybe than an across the pond thing. But they'll say, like, if a risk is hairy, they'll still look at it and they'll still try to find a solution and they'll still try to find a price for it, versus a lot of these other guys that will turn around 3 days or 5 days or 10 days later and send a message and say, doesn't fit our program, decline, and move on.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're going to decline something, we're going to decline it right away for you. We're going to tell you why it's declined, and then we're going to try and find a solution to move it forward. And we'll even revisit things. So we've done declinations before, and the agent said, like, I would really like to revisit this. I'm like, give me the story behind it. Tell me why we should write it. And I'll go back to underwriting. We'll have a conversation and we'll see if we can't get that written. So it has enabled us to be a greater player across all 50 states, which is huge. But in doing that, we realized, there are some things that are outside of our program, right? We can't write the non-vanilla stuff as well. We have to
Yeah.
kind of case by case it, but we struggle. So in doing that, we said, okay, you know what? The world is shifting more towards an excess and surplus play for property anyway. We can incorporate an excess and surplus lines play. So now we have the two admitted programs, which are, admitted, state backed, all that stuff, and rates are
Yeah.
filed and everything is formulaic. And then we were able to add, which will be live hopefully this week or next, the excess and surplus lines coverage as a supplemental. So now on the ease of use play for our agents, they would go into the platform, they would quote that builder's risk. If it didn't fit within our program guidelines, it would automatically shift them to excess and surplus and provide them rates on an excess and surplus basis for that risk. And they could just continue to move forward at that point if they chose to.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes
It,
a lot
it
of sense.
it's about that seamless identification. And I'm glad that we're able to build that out.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it's really smart growth. How you're targeting these niche areas with this expertise, and then expanding across the rest of the states, and replicating that model then up and down the country. I think it's a really smart way to grow the business. Matt, from your perspective, what's been the biggest change in what clients expect from agencies in recent years? I mean, COVID was obviously, a big shift in a lot of expectations. I don't know if that's kind of impacted the way people are thinking. I think people want things faster and faster these days, right? Speed is everything. Amazon has taught us that, right? How much money do they spend on removing all of the clicks so you can buy with one click? What's kind of been the biggest change in what clients expect from you then in recent years?
And that's a great question. And I think that, over the years, and I've been doing insurance for 15 plus years now across different lines of coverage and different carriers, it's been interesting to see the back and forth. And a lot of it has been back and forth up until COVID, where you had this, some people feeling more comfortable with technology and the idea that they can go direct and purchase policies and cut people out and cut middlemans out and, be able to do the one-click purchases or answer 5 questions and get a policy. So you've always seen it's kind of been like a wave where you have people who are dependent on those traditional methods of like contacting an agent, going into an agency, talking to the agent, getting to know the agent, or the agent is a family friend, or they've had their policies with them forever, or whatever it is. So there's always that portion of the population, and that amount of the population that depends on that seems to fluctuate. During COVID, I was a little afraid that that portion of the insurance demographic would disappear completely. And I said,
Mhm.
this plays into those bigger players' games where they want these direct to consumer, direct to consumer, direct to consumer. Um, and it did. It took a big hit on the, face to face kind of clientele,
Yeah,
which in a lot of ways was like a little bit more of an aging client base anyway,
yeah.
because there is this notion of like more faster, right? So everyone wants that instant gratification where they can go on, click a button and get a policy. But the perk of insurance, I think, is still that most people don't understand it. And it's not
Mhm.
something that you can explain by putting a little question mark link above a question on an application because
Yeah.
people still don't grasp it. And so that level of lack of understanding, I think encourages people to still want to explore that agent relationship, that face to face relationship. And that's where it's now become a mix of like what technology can an agent leverage to still give the client the speed that they want and the personal service that they want, to be able to compete with these larger, like, 5-click bind kind of companies.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a lot more individuals depend on, technology and servicing to
Mhm.
get that across, whether it's looking at tech solutions for AMS or for marketing related solutions, or you're looking at, AI for text message reminders and payment reminders, or if they're looking for straight up outsourcing, there's been a
Yeah.
fair amount of play for outsourcing where, agents are seeing that their client base may be dropping or the premium that they're bringing in annually, may not be paying the bills the same way it was. And it's a lot easier to outsource an operation out to another state or potentially even to another country to be able to service the clients so that they can stay forward on the sales side of things, because there has to be this give and take between sales and service and revenue generation. So anything that helps to take the focus where service can be given and service can be delivered timely allows the agent to work on new relationships and new sales and move the revenue stream forward. And that's where you're starting to see distinction in the marketplace, is that some do it phenomenally well and
Yeah.
some struggle. And the ones that struggle because they're not tapping into technology to really drive that forward.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Matt. I think it's a key area, and it's such a buzzword at the moment. AI, it seems like any business that can just bolt that on, their stock shoots up by 20% overnight. Almost in the literal sense a lot of the times. So it's almost becoming diluted before it's even got started. Right, we're in such an early phase with AI, and some of the businesses that I've worked with in the insurance space incorporating AI into their business is just providing their clients with so much information in such a real human-like manner. It's allowing them. So I think you're right. Insurance is a mystery. If you haven't worked in the industry and you don't know it well, it's a mystery, and it kind of has this stigma, which is insurance companies will try to get out of making the payment when it comes to it. That's the kind of stigma that carries because of these few stories. But those stories are around because people haven't done their due diligence and they've clicked on that. I'm going to click 5 boxes and get cover. They haven't read anything. They've received this policy which is too good to be true. It saved them a ton of money, And then it comes to that crunch time where they've got to make a claim, and they're like, oh, this is why it was so cheap, right? This is why it took 5 minutes to sign up to a policy. I think that human interaction is really essential when it comes to insurance. And I know for myself, when I'm taking on insurance, I take up life insurance only just a few years ago, actually. And the process that I went through there was quite arduous, to be quite honest. It was quite a long process to get through that. But having somebody to speak to and talk me through that really gave me confidence in what I was buying. Not everybody has that due diligence, and they just want that quick and easy gratification, as you put it. But when it comes to technology, I see Alchemy is partnered with Input One. Is it Input One payment
Yeah.
solution
So
provider?
our payment solutions are done through Input One, and that's a fairly recent partnership. We went in with Input One probably about 8 months ago. Again, just trying to provide a different level of servicing all around when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the 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 quote bind kind of process. Um, Even today, like I said, when we talk about bigger players in the market, they operate in a fairly archaic manner where they haven't started to move things forward, or they wind up in a situation where, they're waiting on a check, or they're, in an agency bill scenario where they're doing like a sweep here and a sweep there and a return of this and a return of that. And we wanted to be able to provide as much access to payments as possible. Like, I mean, that should be the easiest thing in the insurance space, is to get someone to pay the money for their policy. If you
Essentially,
can't
yeah.
get the money, that's a problem. So the partnership with Input One allows us to expand on what we can offer. It also allows, us access to, and Input One has been fantastic about that, giving us access to new offerings that they have and new beta items that they have. So like one of the things that they kicked around to us, and I'm not sure if I can or cannot disclose, is like the idea of being able to use, a PayPal or Google Pay or Apple Pay to collect funds,
Yeah.
which helps move things forward. Right now, the majority of what we're using Input One is for the integration in the new platform for the Builder's Risk program. So when you are an agent and you're quoting a risk, you're putting that risk in for your client, you're asking those questions, you get everything through to the end. Our underwriting turnaround time, if there's an underwriting review required, is almost instantaneously right now. I've had a fair amount of agents this past week reach out to me and say, this was accepted before I even pushed the button. This was declined before I even pushed the button. What is going on? And I was like, that's our underwriter. He is in there watching everything. So he's able to do that for you. But when you get to the point where you're ready to bind that policy and you've got that client on the phone and the client wants ease of use, you want ease of use, they can push a button and bind that policy. When they push
Yeah.
that button, it starts an automated process that the agent does not have to be involved in. It sends the application directly to the client's email. The client can e-sign the application. As soon as the application is e-signed, the system recognizes it, it triggers Input One, and Input One sends a payment link to the client where they can use any payment method, credit card, ACH, soon to be like PayPal, Google Pay,
Yeah.
Apple Pay,
Mm.
to make that payment. They make the payment directly off the Input One link. It gets credited right into the policy. The policy documents are released and emailed to the client, and the client is good to go.
And that's all
And
automated. Does.
exactly. And I am a huge proponent of, automation and conditional logic in terms of ease of use. I would love for this kind of set it and forget it mindset. And we're trying to do a lot of that with our onboarding and compliance. We're trying to do a lot of that with our reaches, where everything can be programmed in and we can have these campaigns that just automate themselves based on the response from the client. Um, because it helps. It's the idea of being able to maximize your resources via leveraging technology. Like, we're still people, we're still interacting on a human level with everyone, but having automated conditional logic at every step of the way makes things so much more efficient and provides a better experience to the client.
Absolutely. And it ties in beautifully with your brand as well. It really does. This is the kind of thinking and the mindset that you would expect from Alchemy when you look at the website and you look at what you guys are doing, and really, yeah, pushing the boundaries and coming out of quite a traditional mindset in the insurance space. And I'm sure you'll be very successful with it. what's working really well for your team right now, Matt, and what's frustrating at the moment? Because the insurance industry has this kind of archaic kind of image in a lot of senses, and where is the industry not caught up with your vision of where you want to move forward? Then,
I mean, that's a great question. And I think it's not so much an industry thing. Obviously, with insurance, like it's fairly regulated. So we are we are dreamers, we're developers, we're program people. We spend a lot of time, like I said, trying to solve for that difficult X. So when there's trouble in the market and we see something that we can capitalize on and bring a program to market that's going to add value, we want to act as quickly as possible on that, but there's regulatory and legal hoops and departmental hoops that need to be, gone through. We can't, unfortunately, snap our fingers and release a program. So, from that perspective, that is the one thing that really hasn't moved forward is that, when you're
hmm
looking at a state department of insurance to review things, some review fairly expeditiously, some review fairly slowly, and you're kind of at their mercy. So,
yeah,
whereas, in the best plan, best laid plans, you're like, oh, I want to have this out to market by this day. You are so dependent still on other entities to allow you to move forward with that. So that is, probably the number one frustration in the space is being able to get things to market in a timely manner. And so I'm
yeah,
always reluctant to give people dates. I'm like, I'll talk in
yeah.
quarters or I'll talk
Well,
in.
yeah. You can't put your name to it if the dependency is the state, right?
Right.
It's
And so like we can do what we can do on our side, but obviously understanding that there are things that are outside of our control. What is working well is gaining traction on the programs and understanding that there is a market even if you're niche and that market is pretty expansive because I think a lot of the times when we think about niche market, we think about, well, this doesn't cover a ton of ground or there's only going to be X amount of like people who are playing in this space.
it's very interesting indeed. I see that Alchemy, you've obviously got these goals, growth within your lane, as you said. When you think of the next stage of growth at Alchemy, what do you think needs to change within the business in order to get you there? You're looking at these forward things, you're looking at technology. AI is obviously going to be a big driver going forward. Where do you see the need for change within the organization to get you where you need to be next?
That's a great question. And I think as an organization, we are always fairly forward thinking, which I think is huge. I don't The biggest hurdle I think that we're facing right now is actually like having full growth penetration and having the means to do it. And there is no easy technology solution. I mean, so when I started, our network for distribution was largely wholesale agencies, and we had under 100 of those across the entire country, which is great in that they're working with, agents who are submitting things to them on behalf of clients, and there's a bunch of steps there. But it didn't do us service and it didn't do the programs service. So I added to that by looking into aggregator networks that would give us direct access to agents so that those agents could respond directly to their clients with our programs as opposed to following a channel, and then started to look at individualized retail growth. So going into the mom and pop kind of agencies or going into a multi-location account agency and really starting to get those conversations going. And myself and my team have been kind of plugging away at that, but the
Mhm.
things that we need to move ourselves forward is to really increase that distribution. And we've gone from about, at that point, like I said, under 100 wholesale agents to now at present about 7,000 agents across the United States,
Wow.
which is a lot of relationships to manage. And being able to, and being in a market where your foot needs to be on that gas pedal all the time, we need to be driving results for the 7,000 agents that we have. And then we also need to be increasing that footprint because it sounds like a lot of agents. 7,000
Yes.
sounds like a lot of agents. But if you were to look at that distribution, the distribution is heavy in hard to place property states because that is where the need is the greatest. So slicing away at my distribution across all 50 states, we've got 7,000 or so agents now currently in the system. Of those 7,000, maybe 4,000 of those are Florida, Texas, and California.
Okay.
And that's great. Those states will drive revenue for us. But
Yeah.
those other states have the same or similar needs. It's just we haven't been able to penetrate into those markets in the same way. So it is about, and harkening back to what we talked about a little earlier, it's about understanding that market, being able to take it, dissect it into pieces, understanding the market, and then being able to put someone there who can connect on a personal level with the distribution that we need. Because I may not be able to go into the Carolinas
Yeah.
and carry the same message as somebody who lives in South
And breathe
Carolina.
the same air. It's a different thing altogether.
Right. So
Absolutely.
that's the biggest challenges that I see with us moving forward. Um, Other than that, I mean, I'm going to say, and I'll give us praise here, we are a fine-tuned machine when it comes to identifying need in the market, developing programs in the market, aggressively pursuing carrier partners for it, and being able to drive those results forward, which is great. I mean, it's extra job security, especially if I'm in charge of sales and marketing and I'm in charge of distribution. Like, the more you can offer, the more attractive your offerings are to agents. And being able to attune to those needs is the first step into getting that growth potential there. Because a lot of the times, and we do like a monthly webinar series where we engage with our agents and sometimes people who are not even our agents, where we try to talk about the industry, the programs that we're offering, who we are as a company. And we try to vary it up. We try to give like access to experts inside of the industry.
Yeah.
And then we've done things like how to build a builder's risk pipeline because a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I see one here, I see one there. I didn't realize that this is lucrative. How do I approach this? Who do I talk to? How do I find that information?" So being able to provide again extra value to that distribution goes a long way, and that's another one of those alchemy things, right? We're not just throwing up a slideshow there for you. We want to help you build your business. So you may start with one program with us, but you may be able to leverage that into future programs and see successes.
Yeah. Yeah. 7,000 agents managing that. I mean, kind of took me back there. That's a lot of agents, right? That's a lot of people. How do you stay on top of that? I mean, compliance is the obvious one for me, right there. Like, how do you stay? I mean, obviously the onboarding process is going to be robust, right? So you're only taking on agents that you can trust and that are going to serve you well. And I suppose they're responsible for their own compliance, but your name is tied to them. What's that onboarding process look like? How do you kind of select these
Sure.
agents?
So we're less selective than we would normally be at this point because it is a growth opportunity for us. So there is less interrogation than there would normally be. And that's just, full honesty out there. Like the idea
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now is that we're building a network. So we're going to look to take on as many people as we can that are qualified, that have that
yeah,
pipeline in place or can build a pipeline or see one of our programs and then explore the opportunities, do that relationship development, see what kind of growth potential there is. And then we can always kind of weed through what does and doesn't work or coach what needs to, um, because we need the distribution at this point, right? We
yeah,
need that to drive sales because we don't have a direct consumer play out there where we're chasing individualized business. We are, you know, using relationships to build that. It is definitely a challenge. I mean, there are four of us essentially managing all 7,000 of these agencies. They are all independent with an independent mindset. They are free to do
yeah,
whatever they want. They can sell us if they want. They can sell us if they don't. Like, there's ways to do that and not do that. But at the same time, we have to keep our foot on the gas pedal, so engagement is key, and that's where like a lot of things play into technology. So for our onboarding process, like we use a CRM tool for all of our management and our distribution, and that CRM tool is helping to drive results on onboarding, though we're looking at software solutions external to that that will help streamline that further. And then if we can get those software solutions in place, we would look to have that software solution include our onboarding and our compliance. So regulatory and compliance searches would be done that way. feedback would be provided through conditional logic directly to that agent producer that says, hey, we've noticed that your errors and omissions coverage will be expiring next month. Please send us your updated, error and omissions as soon as you can.
Yeah.
We've noticed that you're out of compliance on your continuing education, or that your license has been suspended. Please advise so that we can take the next appropriate steps. So getting to the point where we can have all of that fully automated is
Yeah.
going to be crucial. Right now, it is mostly automated. As we kind of figure out the nuances to the CRM, we've been able to automate more and more of that onboarding and compliance. But having a physical software solution that integrates with our CRM seems to be the direction that we're moving towards from a simplicity factor, because currently we have one compliance team member and she's handling internal compliance for us and our licenses, as well as like external compliance for all of these agents. And it's a
Right.
lot, and when it comes down to how taxing it is and what her resources are and what it costs for her as a resource, it's advantageous for us to look at these options that say, okay, you know what, we can fully automate this process and free up our human resources to actually do other items that are valuable. So we've been looking into that sort of approach. From that standpoint, we've also been, again, trying to automate interactions as much as possible inside of the CRM so that we can keep engagement up with our
Yeah.
distribution. And with that comes like product knowledge and systems knowledge. And that is one of the key components that we're looking to solve now, is that every agent basically gets a training on the programs and the platforms. But you know how training is. Like
Yeah.
you get it, you learn it, you sometimes don't use it, and then you lose it. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to the point where like myself or a member of my team have an open training once a month, where anybody who feels that they need to brush up on something or has a question can attend that training for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, 40 minutes, whatever they feel like they need to attend for, so that they can get that information, so that we stay fresh in their minds, so that the system stays fresh in their minds, so that they don't forget that they have us, because
Yeah.
we're not the only player in the market. So
Yeah.
presence is key to engagement, and you need to be able to be engaged, especially when you have a distribution of that size.
Yeah, so it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to handle, Matt. And um, it's interesting actually, the whole side of it, the whole compliance and staying lean. And it's remarkable you've got one person dealing with that. So it proves how much efficiency and leanness in your organization is key. And it's yeah, it's really really insightful, very insightful. I know you've delivered such a clear picture on Alchemy and the marketing efforts and where you're going and what the company stands for, and it all ties in so wonderfully. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being so candid and so open and taking this time today. And yeah, I'm sure this is going to go down very well with our
Good.
listeners. And
Yeah, not a problem.
and
I appreciate you asking me to join. I think this has been a great conversation, and I again feel so strongly about the company that I am, working on and building here, that I am able to talk candidly and passionately about it. So
it comes across. It comes across. It's clear you're doing what you love, as we touched on in the beginning of the podcast. And on that note, Matt, I'll let you get on with your day. I appreciate your time very much, and I wish you and Alchemy all the best. And I'll be following you very closely for sure.
thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate it. I'd love to stay in touch.
Let's do that. Appreciate it, Matt. Take care.
Likewise. You too. Thank you.